Namaste and very good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening to you.
How are you, sir?
Okay.
Great. Pleasure to see you, sir.
So, should we start, sir?
Yeah, please, we can start.
Okay. Thank you. Welcome to this interesting session, which has been organized during this virtual edition of New Delhi World Book Fair. And we have a very distinguished guest with us, Mr. Eric Falt, the South Asia head of UNESCO. And he is having an interaction with Mr. Yuvraj Malik, the director of National Book Trust India. And the immediate context is, of course, we are holding this conversation on the occasion of the New Delhi World Book Fair, but the framework and the context is the national education policy, which has been announced by the government of India a few months back, and which has been debated very positively, and it's all over India and abroad. So today, the idea is to put forward an Indian perspective, and also how the world of publishing and book trade can help in the implementation of the national education policy mandate and objectives, and how, as as a distinguished uh, you know thinker and official of UNESCO, heading the South Asia region, how do you view this important sector of education in the context of new education policy? I would be reading out briefly for the benefit of our viewers who are, because this is a live program, a brief file of Mr. Eric Paul. He is a French senior official at the United Director and UNESCO representative for the UNESCO New Delhi Cluster Office. Prior to his current appointment, he served at senior level appointments at the UN and the UNESCO. He served as the Assistant Director General for External Relations and Public Information at UNESCO headquarters in Paris between 2010 and 2018. Falt was a trustee for the Television Trust for the Environment, London, from 2002 to 2009, and is a fellow of the Royal Society of Arts. Welcome, Mr. Eric Falt, once again to this program, and we look forward to receive your insightful comments on the new education policy. And our director, Colonel Yuvraj Malik, he joined National Book Trust as a director over more than a year back, and he uh, he uh, he has also served in the United Nations missions in Africa at very senior and responsible positions, and he has been a keen a member to which has gone into the national education policy draft. And first, I would like to start with the director, Mr. Malik, to give us an overview about national education policy, especially in the context of the fundamental changes, as you view, it has brought out in terms of its emphasis on language and other aspects of education. Over to Mr. Malik.
Thank you so much, Vikramji, and very good evening, Mr. Eric. Pleasure to join you here on this session on NEP. As Mr. Vikram has told, before getting into the peculiarities and the fundamental changes that this education policy is carrying with it, we must understand that this has come after a gap of almost 35 years. The country was undergoing a lot of economic and you know political, social, cultural changes, but the academic reforms, the education reforms were pending for almost 3 decades. So now this policy has come up with the things which are contemporary, and it will lay the roadmap for next few generations to come. If I call it a policy, of course, in government terms, we can call it a policy, but actually it's a very significant vision statement for the future generations of the country. And not only India, the human resource which we create for the entire world. The concept in principle about the policy is to give Indian foundation in values, ethos, and knowledge system with international outlook, with the stress on interactiveness in the curriculum and conduct, inclusivity in its character, and impactful in outcome, and also with targets of quality, equity, access, and affordability, along with the accountability. I'm saying this 5 points once again because these are the five fundamental principles of quality, equity, access, affordability, and accountability, which will become the key features of this policy. So when I count the few fundamental reforms which will be coming along with this complete vision statement, we have tried to maintain the flow of learning outcome. That is the first thing. It is not the literacy part of it. The focus has been shifted to learning outcome. Keeping in view, the school curriculum has become various stratas of 5, 3, 3, 4. So that the curriculum is divided on the learning outcome based and a quantified assessment along with the progress card happen. Wherein we have put the pre-primary learning as a regular curriculum with toy integrated learning, creative learning, activity-based learning to produce a brain which is critically thinking. Then we comes to the insertion of multilingual aspect. We have opened the diaspora. We have opened the options of choosing your mother tongue. So primarily the language will be the mother tongue or the regional tongue for education dissemination. Whereas we have option of two regional and one international language to pick up. So that's where we achieve the objective of internationalization of education in the longer run also. Also, we are trying to put universalization of education where we seek 100% enrollment of all school students in school and till 2025 up to 50% in higher education. So this universalization is another feature which is very, very important. Then we are also trying to integrate soft skills, skill development along with the curriculum so that when you graduate from school and college, you are not only academically and theoretically groomed, but also you have some interpersonal or communication or vocational skills with you to give you an edge in the competitive world. Now, coming on to the higher education, there's a strong emphasis on the research foundation, a corpus of around 550,000 crore, that is almost $500 million rupees, have been earmarked for. So this 50,000 crore will be a good roadmap to create a research culture in the country. And we have created an international spectrum of ABC, Academic Bank of Credit, wherein if you study for 1 year, you get certificate, you get 2 years, you get diploma, then you get degree for 3 years, then you get a degree for 4 year research. So the flexibility in the system has come along with the multidisciplinary option. So far, our institutes are not multidisciplinary. So the aim will be to bring everyone in a multidisciplinary approach and put them at par with the international standards. Not only this, we have opened the diaspora for top 100 institutes of the world and universities to come into India, have collaboration, have cooperation, set up their campuses. So the idea is to integrate the Indian education system with global knowledge system. And this integration can only happen if you start working on a different level parallelly and with a focused aim of creating an ecosystem which develops a knowledge economy. So these are some of the things which I think, in summary, we can take away. So with this small brief, I feel there's a opportunity not for India being the largest demography in the world, but also for the regional players, also our neighbors, because when a giant country grows, all the country in the neighborhood do grow. And that's what the idea is. The knowledge is not a personal domain, it is not a restricted domain, it's a global asset. We must share it and we must produce the human resource which is globally acceptable and globally recognized, that we call in terms of our Prime Minister's word, the global citizen, the global human being, the global wealth, and the global human capital to create a knowledge-based economy and a knowledge-based society. With the small brief, I think Vikramji, I leave it to you.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Eric Fall, in the context of the brief given by Mr. Malik, and of course, which is detailed in a very elaborate manner in the document. So, how do you, how as an official of the UNO, and also as somebody who has has a distinguished career in the field of media, in the field of somebody working in the field of environment. How do you find that this policy is able to be able to carry forward they take forward the sustainable development goals, because that is one of the aspects also mentioned in the policy. Mr. Falt.
Good afternoon, and I'm delighted to join this virtual book fair, which I guess is a new experience for all of us. And at first, I really want to say that I understand and relate to all of the readers who miss the physical book fairs. But I must also commend the efforts put in by the National Book Trust of India to still make the World Book Fair happen, even if it is only virtually this year. I've actually had the opportunity to look at this virtual book fair, and I must say that I'm quite impressed. And some of the bookstores made me feel a little bit nostalgic. I think that's probably the beauty of books. Anyway, I just want to get right to today's discussion, which is obviously around the new education policy of India. And from the outset, I really want to say that this policy is an excellent, progressive, science and evidence-based policy, which is truly holistic. The new education policy is transformative, and it does integrate, I would say, 21st century skills provision into the curriculum, in addition to making many other critical decisions and recommendations. This is no doubt a great starting point. This policy has many welcome reforms when we talk about gender equality, foundational learning, holistic learning, and improving the learning outcomes of children. We know also that the government of India has really tried to tackle the COVID crisis by coming to terms with digital solutions. And yes, we are also delighted to know that the policy is in line with the Sustainable Development Goals, in particular SDG 4, which advocates for equitable quality education for obviously, during this short encounter, I'm not going to be able to unpack all the critical themes of the new education policy, but perhaps I can point to three important themes. Gender equality, I've already mentioned it, but I want to mention it again. Importance of education in regional language, that has already also been mentioned. And finally, the internationalization of the higher education sector. So looking at, first and foremost, gender equality, this is clearly one of the critical themes of the new education policy, and it aims to bridge the gender gap, and it talks about all of the right and important issues like gender sensitivity and the introduction of a gender inclusion fund. And I must say that within inclusive education, gender is also a priority of the organization that I represent, UNESCO, and the importance that is placed on gender equality in the NEP is highly appreciated. We have been actively advocating for inclusive education throughout our planning processes, and this is critical. The second aspect that I want to underline today is education in local and regional languages. And with the wide range of multicultural societies that India provides shelter to, providing education in local languages indeed proves to be a step in the right direction for better inclusivity in education. As inclusive education is given high importance in the NEP through multilingual learning, it also advocates for holistic learning experiences, and UNESCO firmly believes that it is indeed in that way that we can provide access to education and quality learning for all. As a multilingual approach in the education system helps to reach what we call the unreached, it plays a pivotal role in providing universal access to education at all levels. And then the third point that I want to touch upon is one of the I would say, less debated, yet most consequential recommendations of the NEP, which is the internationalization of the higher education sector. There's a clear goal in the NEP of making India a global study destination. And in that way, the NEP has charted a very ambitious roadmap for making internationalization of higher education a reality by 2030. This is a very important principle, very important for UNESCO, which is also based on the mobility of not only the students, but also faculty members, programs, and institutions across countries. Before we had the NEP, there were two types of mobility in vogue, that of faculty members and students. This movement of students and faculty has truly informed the NEP section on internationalization, and there's also, as we see it, an attempt to attract foreign universities, which can also be seen in the context of earlier collaborations with institutions outside of the country. So these are very important aspects of the NEP. I must say that we are at UNESCO closely working with the Ministry of Education to successfully implement this very important policy at the national level. And then to perhaps summarize what I've just said, I think it's important to understand that to successfully implement the NEP along with the other SDGs, there is a need to build an education system which closes the gap on inequalities by ensuring access to quality education, regardless of a child's economic status, social identity, or any other vulnerability. And I think we're well on the way to having targeted all of these elements in the NEP. So it's truly an excellent document that we fully support.
Thank you. Taking cues from what Mr. Eric Falt has just said, I was just wondering that maybe he has talked about the different kinds of divides, like gender divide. He's talked about the linguistic divide, and also he's talking about, I would say, the global divide in the sense of when we talk about internationalization of education. I would like Mr. Yuvraj Malik to respond to this rather very grand and ambitious objective of NEP to be able to address and to find avenues to fill these gaps and divides.
Yeah, absolutely. We will come to you. What Mr. Eric has brought is a very, very pertinent point and a very, very significant point. Unless and until we achieve the gender equality, the equality in the society and inclusivity, the whatever we may claim does not serve the final purpose of this society. So this inclusivity and gender equality is on the cards with the thing that we want 100% enrollment in all the schools. That's the target which we have to 2025 and 30. So starting from the grassroots, that every children should be part of the regularized integrated education system. So that's where we don't even think of in terms of gender, and we hope like we have removed, poverty from the country, and this dropout rate will be able to wipe out very quickly the way we are going to structure. The fundamental changes in the administration are taking place, Mr. Merrick. I must apprise you that two kind of education. One is informal education, which is before the school that takes place in the society, which comes under Women and Child Development Ministry. There's one more education which comes in primary segments in all the states, and then higher education. So what is happening is wherever these pre-primary foundational schools are there, they are being integrated with the primary school so that the capacity building takes place. The infrastructure which is available with the regular government schools and the schools in the hinterlands, in the rural areas, where there's a problem of outreach, they are getting integrated for capacity building in terms of infrastructure, in terms of teacher, in terms of equipment, in terms of training, and in terms of the resources. So this integration itself is going in a very fast pace, and that has given a very good result. Another aspect about achieving this equality and that thing is there are so many schemes which government has brought in, and the way we are integrating and connecting with Samagra Shiksha scheme, where we even provide basic food facilities to cut down this dropout rate, and where we provide mandatory education even the primary and secondary education. So these are the wonderful reforms that we are going to take. Some of them are already in place. we will be able to achieve those sustainable development goals which the ideal society should have. Also, in the higher education, as you have mentioned, that regional advocacy, of course, languages goes the best boost. Now, it's a challenge to get it rolling down, and internationalization of education, opening it for the international sector. That was a much needed requirement, and now we are going to integrate the international education system. All those administrative procedures, guidelines, they are in the pipeline. Very soon, they will be functional.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, some of the terms that we use to describe the various aspects of NEP, like equity, it's going to be inclusive. We are integrating. So I was just wondering, Mr. Eric Fall, that recently you wrote an article where you talked about the use of technology in the times to come, and how do you view that? How technology would be able to help the societies like India to meet its objectives of bridging these divides, and also to give a fillip to its a multilingual fabric.
Well, globally, I think we've seen, as you know, that more than 1.5 billion students and youth have been affected by school and university closures due to the COVID-19 pandemic. But the fact that the schools and university were closed does not mean that education did not continue. And we have, of course, maintained that despite the crisis, we could continue to safeguard the access to quality and equitable learning opportunities for all by using new tools. And one of these new tools is digital learning resources and dissemination. I think in this regard, India has made and I had a chance to discuss it recently with the Minister of Education, very significant strides forward by making available all sorts of tools that were not available previously. And we have tried to contribute in our own way, not only at the global level, but here in India. We have worked very closely with the Ministry of Education to see how indeed global resources could be increased. And there, I think, in many ways, India has been leading the way, not only by making resources available online, but also making sure that those who don't have access, and there's still many in this country, who don't have access to the internet, can have access to educational resources through television and radio courses. This has made a huge difference in bridging the gap, and I'm sure it will hold many lessons for the future.
Very rightly brought out by Mr. Eric that initiative in COVID we started with because COVID had changed the perspective of the world. So one nation, one platform idea we implemented, under which we are trying to create a platform, and more than 30 channels are functional where education is being taught online. So this hybrid model of learning where education cannot go physically, it has to go virtually or digitally. So that initiative has already been in pipeline. We have a program known as Diksha, wherein we have digital content being transmitted through radio, tent, TV, and online YouTube channels, and all these mechanisms. Also, the Indian society has responded very well. A lot of education startup have come up, wherein the digital learning is happening through apps or through these digital learning modules. So these are the some of the things. Let me share it with you. The kind of ecosystem which we have. We have almost 1,000 universities. We have almost 1.5 million schools. We have almost 330 million students. We have almost 10.5 million teachers. This is the kind of ecosystem which we have, and that's how I was reading your article. It's beautifully written. You have mentioned very clearly that the percentage of GDP fiscal response is very high in South Asia as compared to Europe. That was a very interesting statistic I found. They quoted at 0.85% of the fiscal package, whereas 0.73 in Europe and North America, and even 0.69 in Latin America. So this is a very interesting development. So COVID has come as an eye opener, and we have tried to leave it to the situation and keep our system functioning.
Yeah, I would like to ask Mr. Eric Falt about since you have this rich experience of working with this global organization UNO, and which imparts knowledge in various streams to and advises on various aspects to the governments. Can you sort of give us some kind of inputs on some of the best practices, international best practices, which we can adopt in bridging these divides in the Indian context?
I'm sorry, the line was not so good and I could not hear you.
Repeat, Vikramji.
Yeah, I was requesting if you could give us some inputs on some of the best international practices, best international practices which India can adopt in utilizing those practices in trying to bridge some of these divides related to technology or gender.
Well, I'm not sure that India has its own ways of moving ahead. It can learn, of course, from other countries, just like other countries can learn from India. In this regard, our role as an international organization is to make sure, indeed, that people can compare notes, and we provide a platform for everybody to come together. In this regard, during the pandemic, UNESCO launched the Global Education Coalition with more than 140 members from the UN family, but also civil society, academia, and the private sector to ensure precisely that learning never stops. This is something that we are doing by monitoring what is happening around the world. In particular, we've been monitoring countrywide and localized school closures, as well as the number of learners who have been affected. We have supported governments in strengthening distance learning. So that's one of the things that we have done. We have also worked to create a repository of national learning platforms to support the continuity of curriculum-based study. In doing that, we've worked with a number of partners, and I would like to mention in particular our colleagues from UNICEF, but also WFP and the World Bank, because with them, we have also developed a framework for reopening, so that there again, there can be common standards to inform the decision-making process on when to reopen schools, how to support national preparations, and guide the implementation process. So this has been one of our roles. It's the role of international organizations to bring people together and try to guide each other if you want. Eventually, we'll also have a big role in taking stock of the pandemic, how it has affected educational systems worldwide. That is actually well underway, but the time has not yet come for firm conclusions, because unfortunately the pandemic is not over yet.
Yeah. Thank you. I think we're in the last segment. I would like Mr. Malik to, if he can give some ideas about the as we said, of the philosophical aspect of the education policy, about the Indian value system, and how we are emphasizing on that, and how we can integrate the same in our learning ecosystem.
Right, Vikramji. Same question was asked by the forum in a few days back. How do you foresee it? If I have to define in one word what we will produce out of this new education policy after it is implemented, so my answer will be that in Hindi we call it Vishmana, and if you call in English it will be global citizen. A citizen who understand his own country's values, ethos, morals, respect the ethos, values, and morals of the entire world community. He is able to become part of the entire ecosystem where he contributes nationally and internationally. And more than that, he is a good human being. Of course, the professional skills, the knowledge-based society, these are the lateral imperatives. But before that, we have to create a human being. And how this education system is going to work is simply based on the fact that we must start teaching them into the module of their mother language. It is not the language as such what we want to say. Because in mother tongue, in the mother language, the regional language, you absorb things faster. The idea is on scientific study, which all the researchers have done, that you learn more up to the age of 5 to 6 or 7 years. One. Number two, you learn highest in your mother tongue. So this idea from grassroots starts with, and the way we are going to come up a new curriculum framework. This curriculum framework will also have values, it will also have international outlook, it will also have skills, it will also have international outlook, and also we have this three language formula wherein we say you learn two Indian and at least one foreign language so that you can connect with the world. In 21st century, we cannot afford to live in isolation. We have to integrate with the world. It's a global family. Idea of surviving in isolation were valid in 19th century. This is 21st. We have to be, global partner in everything. If there's a damage in France or Russia or US, we should feel the impact of it, that this is going to come to us also. So the challenges now are not localized, they are global. Success is also not local, it is also globalized. Development is also not local, it is globalized. The day we start thinking that we have to grow globally, everyone works together. That is the principle, fundamental principle of Indian values. Vasudev Kutumbakam. The world is like a family. So we have to grow, and for that, being one of the largest population country in the world, being such a deep repository of knowledge for last so many centuries, it is our moral responsibility to give back to the world a good knowledge system. This is the basic concept behind this ideological aspect of the education policy. But very interesting. Not only the academic, the commercial, the professional, these kind of. Also, there's a human aspect to it where we think of the mental well-being, which nobody is talking in the world. We are going into digital world endlessly. Some point of time, we need to think the way we are able to think about today about environment. Same way, very soon the world will be thinking about mental well-being. Mental health stage we have crossed. Now we are thinking about mental well-being. If you are healthy, does not mean you are mentally in a well-being state. So that thing have to reach where we have to maintain a balance, and the education system should be able to teach us how to differentiate between these two stages.
Yeah, thank you. We are almost in the last leg of this very interesting conversation. Mr. Eric Falt, sometimes there was this discussion coming up one of the webinars that we had organized around this theme of NEP, that since it has been widely received well, the policy has been widely received well, and there is also that equation that emphasis on internationalization of education. So India being such a large country, and it's not only a large country, it's a democratic country. So how do you foresee? I mean, it's a hypothetical question at this point in time, but how do you foresee a fundamental and a change in the education policy of a country like India impacting the education ambience or ecosystem of, say, South Asia or Asia, or at the global level in the times
Well,
to
I
come?
think, yes, no, I think that quite clearly this has been an achievement. This new education policy. It was a long time in the making. It was expected for many years. Now it's here, and it will influence probably a whole generation of learners in India. It will be studied abroad very closely. Again, every country is different, so what is valid in India may not be valid next door, but it will be, and it is already being studied very closely. The new education policy has been mentioned at many UNESCO fora on education already, starting with our headquarters in Paris, where I know that the representatives of India have been mentioning it, but also others have been commenting very favorably on it. But and that is the most important. It will definitely be an influence for many years to come.
Yeah.
I would like
Thank you.
to mention one
Yeah.
more thing, Mr. Eric. The way we have been structuring in last 3, 4, 5 years, you'll be glad to know that 12 institutes have fallen yesterday in top 100 QS ranking. which is the highest. We have graduated from 1 to 12 in last couple of years. So now 12 institutes are there in the order of merit in QS ranking out of 100, and more than 33 institutes are there in 1000 top premier institutes. So these structural changes are paving the dividends in terms of quantified success also. So these are the quantified parameters. Though education outcome is always abstract, you can only feel it. It's very, very difficult to quantify. Um, I would like to just share one thing with you and take your view on that. Not only education, how you foresee the South Asia arena coming up. You see India very closely. Your article was phenomenal, the way it explained how the ecosystem has been disturbed and how digital intervention has played a big role in providing access to knowledge in the lockdown period. How do you foresee when this policy in a country of size India with 135 you know uh, billion people are there, how when this is implemented, how it will benefit and impact the small regional players which are surrounding India, especially the neighbors?
Well, it's for them to say, not for me to say. I think we will see in the future. Our office covers several other countries in the region, including, for instance, Sri Lanka, Nepal, and Bangladesh. They have been watching very closely, and I'm sure they will decide for themselves if and how some of the lessons from the NEP are applicable to their own countries. There's so many aspects which, in any case, are in line with global principles. That these principles will be followed in these countries as well, I'm sure.
Thank you. I believe that we would find more avenues for discussions, and maybe the National Book Trust being the book promotion and the national body for book publishing of Government of India, we will have some kind of institutionalized mechanism to work with your office to promote the ideas of reading and education. And I would like to thank our guest, Mr. Eric Falt, for yes, sir.
One
Yes,
small
please.
point, Mr. Eric. India is a guest of honor in France in coming May or June. It was supposed to be last year, but due to COVID, we could not do it and participate in the Paris Book Fair. So I will invite you to come there, India's guest of honor, and we would be happy to host you. And you'll be glad to see that we'll be focusing not only India but national education policy also in the pavilion. And being one of the strong ambassador of UNESCO and watching things very closely, we will look forward as National Book Trust, which is the nodal agency of the country in terms of publication, and also the knowledge partner of the country in terms of its content. So if there are any scope of collaboration with UNESCO, and we can create the content together, or we can take the content which fall into the mandate and purview and principles and guidelines of the UNESCO, it will be a grand opening for us. We would love to take that task and assignment because we have a huge outreach in the country, and you have a huge reservoir of experience and knowledge with UNESCO, which is so beautiful and well scripted with a global outlook and global understanding behind it. So that kind of content collaboration as a knowledge partner, NBT and UNESCO, I really look forward some content collaboration as a knowledge partner. And of course, I warmly I invite you to join our pavilion in Paris.
It would be my pleasure, and I'm sure we can continue this conversation offline. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Falt. Thank you, sir, Director, National Book Trust,
It was a
and
pleasure.
and thank you is due to the team members of both offices for making this happen. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye
Namaste.
bye.